Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Masters in Creative Writing information session. Before we start, I just want to inform you that this session is being recorded and it will be shared on the ICE YouTube channel, and the recording will be sent to anyone who has registered for this event after the session. My name is Lisa Hitch. I'm an Academic Centre Coordinator at the Institute of Continuing Education at the University of Cambridge, and we're also known as ICE. Today in the panel, we have Dr. Jo Reid and Rupert Wallace, who are course directors for the MSt in Creative Writing. We have Callum Beasley, who is one of our previous students. We have Callie Cardines from our enrolment team, and we have Ella and Alice from our marketing team who are supporting us. Next slide, please. This week, we've been running a variety of online sessions to give students the opportunity to find out more about our master's programmes at the Institute of Continuing Education. Course information sessions like this one, covering each course in our master's portfolio, have been taking place each evening at 6:30 p.m. In addition to our live sessions, we also have additional video resources available on our website to give you further information on funding options, the application process, college matriculation, student support and interview preparation. So if you missed any of our sessions, or there's a session coming up that you're unable to attend, then you can watch the recordings, which will be available on our website 24 hours after each event. Links to resources and events are shared in the chat and will also be sent via email after this session. Next slide, please. So ICE was established 150 years ago in 1873. We were the first university-led continuing education provider in the world. Today, we offer a wide range of courses to adult learners, including short online and residential weekend courses, international summer programs, award-bearing part-time undergraduate and postgraduate courses, covering a number of subjects from archaeology through to genomic medicine. We also act as the admitting body for all MSt courses within the University of Cambridge, with our MSt students becoming members of a Cambridge college upon commencement of their studies. ICE is a place where professional networks are formed, friendships are made, and the transformative power of learning is recognised. Next slide, please. Once you've accepted an offer to study with us, you become a member of a University of Cambridge college, which will grant you the same level of support as full-time college students. As well as having access to standard college resources, you would have an allocated college tutor who is be responsible for your welfare and pastoral support, and your college will confirm arrangements such as matriculation, graduation, your university card. We work with a number of different colleges, and for the MSt in Creative Writing specifically, we work with Downing, Lucy Cavendish, Selwyn, St Edmunds and Wolfson. When you apply for the course, you would state a preference for one of these colleges. But if you've been a member of the University of Cambridge before and already have a college affiliation, you could choose to stay with your existing college, but we would expect that you would kind of make a contact with them first to see whether they would be able to accept you as an MSt student. If you would like to watch our informative video, there's a link in the chat for more information on our college partnerships and to hear from the colleges themselves, please do so. Next slide, please. So in today's session, we'll take you through what you can expect from the MSt in Creative Writing, including entry requirements, teaching style, module content and assessment. You will hear from one of our current MSt Creative Writing students, which is Callum. And at the end of the presentation, our enrolments team will take you through what kind of support we can provide you during your application process. We have reserved time at the end of the session to answer your questions. So please send us your questions for any members of the team via the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen during the presentation. I'll now hand you over to my colleagues Rupert Wallace and Dr. Jo Reid, who are the course directors for the MSt in Creative Writing.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Hello, everyone. My name is Rupert Wallace. I've been teaching on the Masters in Creative Writing for 7 years. This is my 8th year. Just to give you a little bit of background on the course, It started in 2013 with about 12 students, and we're now up to 40 students a year. So we've really kind of grown over the last 10 years or so. We've got a very vibrant cohort of students now, a community of writers. Joe, do you want to kind of just introduce yourself and say hi as well?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Joe Reed. I'm co-directing the course alongside Rupert for this coming year, and I'm a fiction specialist. I'm a novelist, and yes, it's very nice to be here.
And just to explain a little bit about what we do in the course, I mean, primarily our job and the job of our colleagues is to make you better storytellers. That's what we're trying to do. And we kind of do this by taking you through different genres, by kind of cluing you into the way that different genres work and different writers work, and perhaps starting to see in the first year that you're with us, starting to see links between the different writing styles and different genres and learning what it takes to become a really great storyteller. In terms of what students go on to do as a result of the course, obviously storytelling is a very transferable skill into business and in lots of different professional roles. We have students who go on to do PhDs as well, both in creative writing and in English literature. We also have obviously students who go on to publish their work, and we have a sort of track record of alumni that we can talk about later on in the Q&A session. So it's a very mixed bag, and I think the thing I'd point out now is in terms of success, it's entirely dependent on what it is that you want out of a course. Some people have never been to university before and they just want to kind of have that sort of critical rigor, grappling with essays and critical understanding of writing. Others want to improve their storytelling skill in the hope of perhaps being published later on in life. The course itself is 2 years. It's part-time, and the next iteration of the course in 2025 will start in 22nd of September and finish on the 1st of July in 2027. And that 1st of July is basically when you hand in your dissertation, which is taken up by most of your study in your second year. We run the course using 5 residential teaching blocks. They're all held at Madingley Hall in Cambridge, it's about 2 miles outside the centre of Cambridge. We have 4 residencies during the first year. They're roughly 4.5 days each, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about those a bit later on. They deal with different genres, as I alluded to earlier. So the module 1 deals with poetry. Module 2 deals with prose fiction. Module 3 deals with writing for performance, that covers a lot of things from screenwriting to TV writing, plays, and audio podcast. And the final module is creative non-fiction. They're very intense, and again, we'll come on to talk about those a little bit later. We also supply you with a reader before each module, which is a collection of texts and critical work, which we use to allow you to attune yourselves to the different genres and the different modules you're going to be looking at in the first year. They're full of, as I say, lots of reading, but also exercises and questions that we ask to help you sort of get used to poetry or creative non-fiction. And invariably, a lot of people haven't experienced writing in those forms a lot of time. The 5th residency occurs in the second year, and that's it's about 2 days, and it's coming together a sort of celebration of everything that you've been writing on in your dissertation in the second year. It's very much a change of gear from year 1 to year 2. Year 1, you're much more in a cohort setting when you come together at Madingley. Year 2, you're much more focused working with your supervisor on the dissertation that you decide to write. It's much more kind of you're much more tuned into yourself and your work, and it is like being a professional writer. You're literally going away, writing, coming back, and then speaking to your supervisor at various points through the year. I'll talk a bit more about the assignments as well, but just in very broad terms, we have 4 assignments in year 1, and then, as I said, we have the dissertation in year 2, and the qualification of the Masters is an equivalent to 180 credits at Masters of Studies. And the application deadline for this iteration will be the 15th of January in 2025. Thanks. Next slide, please. So a very broad remit description of our academic team. We have Dr. Yvonne Battle-Felton, who sits across all the academic creative writing courses that we run at Madingley. For the MSt in Creative Writing, it's myself and Joe, who are the co-course directors. And then we have a list of our colleagues there who also teach and specialize in various areas, from poetry to prose fiction to creative non-fiction. I would also say that we have a broad base of panel tutors that we draw on as well, who come in and talk to a particular specialty across the various modules. And they're very important tutors for us because they also do supervise in the second year. So as you go through the year, the first year in the course, you get to meet not only us, but also the panel tutors. And perhaps you might connect with someone and decide, oh, I'd like them to supervise my project with them. Alongside our panel tutors, we also have guest speakers who come in, and I'll show an example of that a little bit later. But this is our core teaching team who take you through the modules, but as I say, it's supplemented by panel tutors and guest speakers who we try and draw on to sort of supplement the modules. Next slide, please. So we thought it might be the best, rather than me kind of talking around what a module might look like, thought we might show you what a timetable of a module actually looks like. So this is our most recent module that we ran in September, and so it's module 1, and it's our poetry module. And you'll see that we have some of our core team there, Dr. Perma Hamed and Dr. Joan Limburg, and also I think Lucy Deneen, Dr. Deneen is there. We also have some guest speakers from Hannah Lavery and Barney Capel and Kieran Bath. A couple of things I'd like to mention here is you'll see that we have some joint sessions. And what that means is, because we have 40 students in a year, we split those students into 2 cohorts because we want the teaching to be nice and intimate and kind of devoted to you guys. So we have 2 cohorts who are taught simultaneously at the same time, and we have 2 separate timetables, so they kind of work off each other through the week. Occasionally we do have joint sessions, as you'll see on the timetable, where all 40 students will come together in a sort of bigger setting, and it creates, again, a sense of community and a sense of spirit. And obviously, outside of classes, everyone is together. We eat together, we kind of socialize together, and each sort of module at Madingley Hall is very much like a writing retreat, and as I say, it's very intense. And there are lots of classes here that you can see. They run at about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes each, and we do pack quite a lot in. The other thing I would just flag up here are on Thursday, at the 26th of September here, we've got workshops. So the final day of every module is always devoted to workshopping, and we have small workshop groups where you present your work and your group works through your work with you. We ask you to submit your work a day or so in advance of the workshops, so that people have time to look at your work. And they're small workshops, roughly around about 5 to 6 people in each workshop. So there's plenty of time to talk through your work and discuss your work. Each workshop is led by one of us, or by a visiting tutor if it so happens that they want to be involved. Joe, is there anything else you'd like to mention here about this particular timetable?
Well, one thing you'll see on this particular timetable is poetry is our first module of the year, and you'll see at the bottom we actually have the matriculation event. So that's the connection between your college and the main university, because you will attend with us on the MSt program, but you will be matriculated through your college. So you can see down at the bottom, the different colleges are going off at different times, where they're dressing in their gowns, they're tending to go to a formal dinner, and they're receiving their documentation and their student card, and they're formally becoming part of the university, which is a very important part of the degree process for our students.
Great, next slide, please. So this is just another example, and this is actually the module that we're going to be running later this month in a couple of weeks or so. It's our prose fiction module. So again, you'll see myself as a fiction writer, and also Joe, we're involved, and our colleague, Dr. Nick Bradley, as well. Again, we have guests coming in, so we're lucky enough to have David Nichols coming in, obviously a screenwriter and novelist, so he'll be doing a masterclass with our students. We also have Annabelle Stedman, who is one of our alumni, who a very successful children's author who sold a very big book off the back of coming out of the program. The other thing I would mention is you might see on Wednesday, we have a critical writing session, and that speaks a little bit more to the assessments I'm going to come on and speak to. But as alongside your creative writing and the kind of application and the attention and care that we give to that, we do also ask you to write critical essays as well around your work. And we're aware that some of you perhaps haven't written essays for a very long time, or perhaps never have done. So we do put in some sessions into each module to talk around critical writing and how you might approach an essay. Next slide, please. So yeah, onto assessment. So in year one, we ask you to write 4 assignments, and these are comprised of a creative piece of work married up with a critical piece of work. And the creative assignment, it does vary in length according to what genre we're asking you to write in. So for example, for prose fiction, it'll be a creative piece of work of up to 4,000 words. For poetry, I think it's 750,000 words. I think for screenwriting, again, it's probably 4,000 words, and creative nonfiction, again, 4,000 words. Alongside your creative piece, we'll ask you to write a critical piece as well, which is a reflective piece upon your process of writing the creative piece that you've submitted. The creative work isn't assessed properly. It's given a mark, but it's only formatively marked. So the mark does not count towards your final degree. The reason for that is we ask you to be experimental in your creative work, because that's one of the ways you're going to learn. So take risks, experiment with creative work. The critical work is something that counts towards your degree, and each essay that you write in response to your creative work through that first year counts for 10% of the overall mark for the degree. So because you write 4 essays within that first year, you will account for 40% of your degree in that first year. In the second year, you're obviously going to be focusing much more on your dissertation, which is your big creative piece. So everything you've learned in that first year creatively, you're going to apply to that second year dissertation. It's a big piece of work. It's up to 15,500 words. Invariably, it's the sort of the beginning of a novel, or pretty much it is a TV pilot. It's slightly less for poetry, or a lot less for poetry, because obviously poetry requires different skills. But the dissertation, the creative piece, counts for 50% of your degree, and then we ask you to write 1 further essay in response to that creative piece, which is the further 10%. So hopefully, if I've done my maths, although I'm not a mathematician, everything should add up to 100% there. So you can see the weighting and the balance between the 2 years and the assessments within that. I'm sure there'll be questions on that, which we'll be happy to answer later on. Now, I'd quite like to, before I get onto the application process, introduce Callum Beasley, who is also with us. So Callum, I don't know if you're there and want to say hi. So Callum, can you just tell us a little bit about when you were on the course and when you left the course?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yes, my name's Callum. I believe I was the 2019 to 2021 cohort. So that did span the pandemic.
Yeah, which was unfortunate, but we got through it, which is pretty good, I think. And I was actually your supervisor for your dissertation in the second year. And do you want to talk a little bit about that and the sort of relationship that we had at a sort of academic level, doing our supervisions?
Yes, certainly. I think it's it's an honor to be invited back here today, and I think that shows that the relationship that we built was a strong one. I'm still here today, and following the duration of the course, we've caught up a couple of times to discuss creative projects of mine and yours.
And you actually you created a whole manuscript on that course, right? I think we managed to create a whole manuscript.
Yes, we did. If I had £1 for every time you use the word story, I'll be richer than most novelists. So to echo what you said at the start of the billing today, yeah, you do turn us into storytellers. So to hone those first 15,000 words of that creative piece, that dissertation, I felt it necessary, in my opinion, to have that complete arc, that complete story, so that those 15,000 words could be the best that they could be.
And you've gone on to use that because you've gone to have some success, right?
Yes, a few successes during the course. I was fortunate enough to be published in the Maze Literary Anthology, which is an opportunity that you'll have. And I think the deadline to that happens quite quick in the first academic year. So do your research on that, because I missed it the first year, but luckily got in there second time around. But just recently I've won the Kelpies Prize for Writing, which is a competition held by Discover Kelpies, which are the largest children's publisher in Scotland. And writing for kids is what I specialised in during year 2.
Brilliant. Well, many congratulations. And I guess one last question for me is, if obviously we've got lots of people watching are thinking of taking on the course, do you have a piece of advice for sort of people who are sort of applying?
Be yourself, be honest, in a way that the first year is allows you to experiment. Don't hold anything back on those creative pieces of writing that you'll put forward, because if you are fortunate enough to attend interview, you're going to have to defend that piece of work. So wear it on your sleeve. And if you're thinking about putting that word in or that line, put it in. You don't want any regrets at the end of the day.
Thank you, Callum. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good to see you. So a little bit just about the application process itself. We ask for a number of items in the packet. So references, academic transcripts, if you do have them. We do take in students who haven't been to university before. We have to sort of write up a reason for why they should come on the course, and that there is a process. But we are a broad church, and we're happy to take people who haven't been formally educated or had sort of undergraduate degrees. A CV, an up-to-date CV, a personal statement of, I can't remember what the word count is, but it's around about 1.5 to 2 pages. A research proposal of 500 words, which basically points to what it is you might be thinking of writing for your dissertation. We don't hold you to that because we understand it's just a sort of, it's 2 years down the line, but it just gives us a sense of something that you might want to talk about in the interview. And of course, we ask for a writing sample as well. It's up to 1,000 to 3,000 words of prose, maybe up to 1,000 words of screenplay, or 500 words of poetry, depending on kind of where your strength lies and which piece of creative writing you think best represents the writer you are. As I said before, the deadline for the applications for this coming cycle is 15th of January. We tend to interview roughly kind of between February and March, and they will be online interviews. And our initial offer is usually round about in April sometime. Next slide, please. Lisa, I think this is your slide, so I might hand back to you now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, so just to go through what funding support is available. So to apply for the course, there is a £50 application fee. Information can be found on the university's website regarding the fee waiver. So the criteria that you need to meet for those, and that will be posted in the chat for you, so you'll be able to see that. You'd also be eligible for disabled students allowance. This course qualifies for the postgraduate master's loans. So if you are eligible to apply for that, further information can be found on the government's websites. ELCAS, which is support for the armed forces and service leavers and veterans. Sally May loans, which a lot of our US students apply for. So this course again can be eligible for that. We also have a Joy Brandon bursary, which is set up by a former student, and that allows for up to an 80% fee reduction to support aspiring Black British Caribbean writers. We're just waiting on confirmation that bursary is going to be available for 25-27. So if anybody is in the process of making an application or has already submitted an application, we will contact everybody as soon as we know that that is being offered, and we will let you know that that's there and how to apply for that bursary. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand you over to Callie, who is from our student enrolment team, and she will just be able to talk you through the support that the enrolment team can provide sort of during the application process with any questions that you might have. So Callie, over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the session so far. So as Lisa mentioned, I work in the enrolment team as one of the student enrolment coordinators, and there's a team of us that are on hand to support prospective students, applicants, work their way through the application process. We can support students right from the offset before they've even started an application to decide what course may be best suited for them. If they're looking at a number of different courses and trying to select the one that would be more suitable for them and what they're looking to get out of the course. We can talk you through requirements, if there's specific requirements in place that you need some extra support, advice or guidance around. We have requirements around English language, and we're more than happy to support with any questions you have on that. And we will essentially be on hand to provide any guidance you have from the beginning of the application process right until you submit your application and are in the process of potentially being selected for interview. Our team are really friendly, we're really approachable, we're happy to support with whatever question it is. We don't think any question is a silly question. So if you're stuck and need a bit more guidance, then please do reach out to us. You can contact us using our email address, which is on the screen. It's questions@ice.cam.ac.uk, or you can get in touch with us through the course page if you go onto the MSt Creative Writing page on our website and click the Ask a Question button. As Lisa mentioned, there's lots of different funding support opportunities available for students. So if you do have any further questions on any of those funding support options that Lisa mentioned, then again, please do reach out to us and we'd be happy to support with that. So I think I'll leave it there. We hope to hear from as many of you as possible. As I said, we're on hand to answer whatever we can. And if we can't find out the answer, we'll be sure to make sure we point you in the right direction so you get the information that you need. Yeah, hopefully we hear from some of you soon, and I'll hand you back over to Lisa, I think.
Thanks, Callie. Okay, so we'll go to some of your questions now. We've got a few that we're going to sort of take from what you've been posting. Joe and Rupert, I think this is probably going to be for you. Is there any instruction taking place outside of the residential teaching blocks, or will there only be assigned reading and questions to consider?
Joe, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So there is instruction outside the residential teaching blocks. One aspect of that is the supervision process, which happens in second year. And that will either be in person or online. It's really going to depend on whether you happen to be sort of geographically in the same place as your supervisor, or whether you might be remote. If there's an international student and you're being supervised by someone in Cambridge, obviously those meetings will happen online. But if you both happen to be in Cambridge, they can happen in person. The other important element of online content we offer is in second year, we offer a series of online workshops with peers. So we make sure that everyone has the chance, if they wish to take it up, to workshop their thesis project with a small group. It will be about, so I ran my workshop this morning, in fact, and it was 6 people, and the 6 people in the workshop are working on novels and sort of taking it in turns to share their novels with their peers. And we'll do that throughout the year from September going through to June until they submit in July. So those are two major aspects of teaching that happens online. Other than that, there are literary events sometimes happen online. We offer a great deal of opportunities to do with Cambridge and wider opportunities online. Our academic director, Dr. Yvonne Battle-Felton, runs an online open mic, which is very enthusiastic about getting as many people as possible. So that's for our students, it's for students at undergrad in Cambridge, and it's really for anyone, in fact, who wants to come along. In fact, you could come along right now, even before applying to that open mic. So that's a really important aspect of community building too.
I think the other thing I would just add to that is that we, as I said, our residencies are very intense, and obviously you have your assignment to write after that, which takes up quite a lot of time. The course is part-time, but it's as part-time as you want to make it, according to your needs. We encourage you to kind of get together in your own workshopping groups, because you know, if you're lucky enough to be accepted onto the course, you're meeting with people who are like-minded. They're kind of writing nerds. They're people who just want to write, and it's quite hard to find those people. So invariably, we find that lots of our students start to kind of stick together and create their own workshopping groups that work around the course itself. So that's very important, and hopefully that's something you can take on beyond the course itself, because again, once you're back out in the world, it's quite hard to find sort of similar-minded people who are going to read, you know, 20 pages of your novel or whatever it is. So we very much encourage you to kind of create your own kind of commitment outside of the residencies.
Okay, thank you both. Another quick question for you both as well. For the Year 2 dissertation, are students allowed to submit a 15,000 word excerpt of a longer piece of work?
Absolutely, yeah. Invariably, as I was discussing with Callum, he did write much more than 15,000 words, but it's such are the restrictions of our particular masters. There is a word limit on what can be examined by the external examiners. So it's entirely up to you what you want to do in that, what you want to achieve in that second year. It can be, you know, piece of a much longer piece of work. It could be a collection, 3 or 4 short stories. It's whatever you want it to be, but for our purposes of our marking, it has to fall within that 15,000 word remit.
Okay, thank you. I think I can probably answer this one. So from Mimi, for applications where it asks us why we're applying part-time, but the course is only offered part-time, what type of response are you looking for with regard to this question? I think what we're really looking for is how you see this course fitting alongside what you are doing at the moment. So it's kind of seeing that you are taking into consideration the time that this course will take alongside whether it's you're working full time or something like that. So that is kind of the what we're looking for there. So it's just an acknowledgement that you realize that you will be doing this alongside whatever it is you do normally in your day-to-day life. So that's kind of that quick question to that one. Okay, another question again, Joe and Rupert, maybe between us. Is the teaching mode friendly to someone who has an interest in creative writing but no experience in it? Right, the question's just gone. No experience. If I have never written a creative piece in my life, what would your advice be for me before applying for the masters?
To that one, I would suggest that actually ICE offers a great deal of options in terms of the wider academic offerings at ICE. So we offer weekend courses, we offer summer courses, and we also offer a certificate and a diploma in creative writing. And those are all levels where you can come along and practice creative writing. And it's really for students often who might be starting out and just dipping their toe into writing. Those courses are really good to come along. They're taught often by people who teach on the MST. So I teach on the summer school program. I teach the weekend courses. I teach on occasion on the dips and cert. So you're getting the same level of teaching, but there's not the expectation that there is on the MST that it's kind of an advanced level of writing. Because we should point out for the MST that we don't have necessarily sort of set writing milestones we'll expect you to have achieved, but it is an advanced writing degree. So we might suggest that if you've done literally no creative writing at all before, you might want to dip your toe into creative writing and creative writing at ICE by taking on one of the other courses in the creative writing umbrella.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And a question with regards to the workshops. Do the workshops on the final day use the work you have written during the residential blocks?
Yeah, they do. So we ask you probably a couple of weeks before, we give you a prompt prior to the module to write around something. These prompts can be quite loose. So you can, you know, I think for the prose fiction module, we are giving you the option to bring in something that you're working on that you can then workshop within that day, within that Thursday. So the answer to that is you can either write something within the module or you can bring something that perhaps you're working on outside of the course.
or many students do a kind of combination whereby they bring something and then they modify it as they find insights throughout the week, and then they submit that thing as well.
Thank you. Okay, a question for Callum. Callum, if you hadn't gotten into this program, what would you have done? Would you have applied for another MSt program in creative writing at a different university, or would you have independently pursued writing?
Good question. I would have continued writing, but perhaps about art. It would have been art history. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Another question, are there any internship opportunities for international students whilst we are studying at Cambridge? As far as I'm aware, there's not, but I think this would be something that you would have to pursue individually to see whether there were any sort of internships like that. But certainly in the programme itself and in the administration that we look after, we don't have any internships for the course.
I'll just add something to that as well. Thinking of an example of the year that we've just had. So some of the guest speakers that come in, they get to sort of speak to students, and perhaps opportunities can open up for students there. So it's always good to kind of chat to anyone that we bring into the course to see what opportunities might be available kind of in a wider orbit of the course itself.
Thank you. And then I think this one is going to be for Joe, Rupert, and a bit of Callum. Any advice on what the team are looking for in application and an interview, and any tips in general for producing something for the writing sample for those who've been out of the habit of writing for a while? And for Callum, maybe how much time did you spend on preparing your creative writing application?
Well, I think my answer would be in that first portion of the question is that, fundamentally, we understand that you're coming on, the reason you're coming into a course like this is you're not the finished article, you're not the finished product, and that's our job to try and help you, further down the road to that. So I'm always looking for somebody who I think it has got the chops to be a storyteller, and perhaps looking at, how I might be able to sort of help them tell their stories more effectively, either through various craft or technique, or perhaps thinking about the more sort of, the dialogue or something like that, some sort of craft element. Joe, I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer without sounding wishy-washy, but I think we're all an important thing Rupert's highlighted is the community aspect of the MSt. When you join, you really become part of a sort of giant 80-person family, really. So we're going to get to know you very well over the course, and we're going to work closely with you. So what we're doing a lot of the time when we're reading those applications is we're looking at them and imagining you fitting into a future cohort. And to address the kind of writing sample side of things, that kind of comes down for me a lot of the time to thinking, am I really excited to work with this person on this piece of writing? Have they got some idea that's really driving them along, or have they got an ability to write dialogue that just zips and zings, or have they got some incredibly good way of describing a scene where they've just picked out really fine details? So in a way, what I would say about submitting a writing sample is sort of don't set out to impress us by doing everything. Don't give us a piece where you're trying to be something you're not. You're trying to aspire to a level of academic writing or literary writing that is not natural to you. Just give us a piece where you're doing your best tricks. You're really wowing us, because that's what really excites us about writers. Writers are able to do something particular and uniquely well.
And as well as echoing what Rupert and Joe said there, I spent lots of time on the application. When writing it, I was coming to the end of my undergraduate degree. But what I would say is try and think outside the box, again, without sounding wishy-washy, but can you do something different with the application? Can you bookend it? So that application piece of paper in itself is that, that should be a piece of writing, that should be a story. But does it highlight what you're doing at the moment? So writing, for me, without sounding cheesy, again, it's a way of life. So are you doing, before you're on the course, what you should be doing and what you're saying you're going to do while on the course? So going to book readings, attending author events, seminars, everything like that. and it's a way of life. And if you're attending those things, you're more than likely posting it on social media. So the guys and girls that are interviewing you will know if you're telling porkies or not. So yeah, and as well as not being the finished article, I saw myself as a poet when I attended the interview, and that was the shiny piece of writing that I submitted. However, I went in knowing what I wanted or what I needed from the people interviewing me. So I wanted to be a better novelist because that's where I felt I was lacking. So I used the poetry as the shiny bit to highlight what I can do, but I knew what I would like to do over those 2 years.
Brilliant, thanks, Callum. Another question, for the writing sample, are you allowed to submit 3 different excerpts, or can it be sort of more excerpts that add up to the 3,000 words, or should it be a continuous piece of prose?
That's a choice of the that would be the choice of the applicant. I would say just always think about the reading experience for the person reading it. So if you feel like you have a particular talent, you're sort of a Lydia Davis or an Edgar Carrette type writer who writes 1,000-word stories and you want to submit 3 of them, then do feel free to do that. But also be aware that maybe if you're submitting tons and tons of small pieces of writing, it can sometimes become a sort of jarring reading experience for screeners of an application. So you might instead want to submit, you don't write to the word limit. Submit something that fits within the limits but showcases your best work, rather than thinking that more is necessarily better.
Thank you. And then, do writing samples for the application have to be unpublished, or can a student submit a sample of already published work?
Good question. I'm not sure about that. That's a really good question. I think it can probably be published as far as I know. I don't think we ever had anyone who's submitted anything that has been published, although we have had published authors who've come onto the course. I can't remember whether they used their own work as a sample, so I'd have to get back to you on that.
No, it is possible actually. I've had one case where I've had to check that. So yeah, it is allowed.
Okay.
Just make sure it's within the word count.
Okay, and another question, would a short story collection proposal be suitable for a research proposal, or is there a preference for a longer form when it comes to a 15,000 word piece to submit? I can probably say, yeah, absolutely, a collection of short stories is fine for your research proposal. Joe and Rupert might like to add something to that, but yeah, short story collection, no problem.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
short stories.
Yeah, you go. Yeah, short story man, Jay. Yeah, absolutely. You can. I think. No, we are interested in seeing what it is that you are thinking of writing it in that second year, and we are. Our bank of supervisors comes primarily from us, but if there is something that you're particularly interested in writing or approaching in that second year, we will try and find a supervisor either within the wider remit of Cambridge University itself, or possibly even outside of the university, who might be appropriate for you for that. So we're interested in pushing the boundaries here. So no, there's kind of no limit on that at the moment. It's just that as long as we can market effectively, I think.
Okay, thank you. Another question. I'm partway through drafting a semi-autobiographical novel. How will your course support developing this form of writing, which explores cultural identity and diaspora experiences?
Joe, do you want to try and answer that?
Yeah, sure. It sounds like a really fascinating novel proposal. So the key aspect of that is probably going to be the supervision. And it's a good chance to talk about the supervision, actually. So as Rupert's outlined, you'll go through the first year doing these different modules and having teaching from us and teaching from a range of guest lecturers. In the year after, you'll work with the supervisor, and students have some autonomy in selecting the kind of supervisor who's appropriate for their project. We have a dossier that we circulate to students that has about 30 to 40 supervisors in them, and those are those of us who work on the course, but there are also people who work as panel tutors and people who have supervised before. In the case of this dissertation, when you're writing a novel about cultural identity, about diaspora, you might be looking for someone who's published in those areas, who has those kind of experiences. And that is definitely someone that you could find in the supervisor dossier or from the network of writers that we're in contact in. So I think the thing we would do for this project is it sounds really good, and it would be about you finding out who you wanted to work with on it, and us giving you various options of someone who we think might support developing it.
No, I would say just to add to that, that we do have students who are working in that similar diasporic kind of environment, and it's either, you know, a sort of autobiographical, or it tends to be we're seeing more writing in terms of lyric essays and things like that. So it is something that I've seen over my time on the course. It's become a much more popular kind of area to work and write in. So it's something that we are aware of and we supervise for effectively.
Okay, thank you. And another question that's come up from a couple of people: how much contact would we have with publishers or agents throughout the course?
So in the first year, we don't introduce you to agents and editors and sort of people who work within the publishing industry, because we don't think you're perhaps ready, and we kind of don't want to pressurize you with that. We really want you to kind of learn the craft of your writing. In the second year, we do start to introduce you to agents, editors, and others who work in the publishing industry. We also, in the last couple of years, have set up an agent mentoring scheme. So for those of you who get to the end of the course and feel ready to be kind of mentored by an agent, we will match you and an agent together. They will read a small portion of your work, and you will have a chat with them to talk about kind of what they think of the work, its sort of position within the wider remit of the market, and things like that. And you may or may not hit it off. There's no kind of that the agent isn't committed to signing you up, for example, but it's just to get a sense of, you know, taking the temperature of how your work feels through agents' eyes. But yes, we do, obviously, writing is part and parcel. It is a job at the end of the day for lots of people, and it is an industry, and we do introduce the kind of practical side of things at the proper time in the course.
Okay, thank you very much. Another quick question: if the research proposal is an idea for a novel, how fully developed does the idea need to be?
That's a good question. It has to be developed enough to give us a sense of what it would look like to work on it in a university setting. So what we're really looking for in the research proposal is how is it going to work in that second year when you're working one-on-one with the supervisor? And working with the supervisor, you will be meeting with them 5 times over the course of the year, and you will send them material, and they will read ahead of time, and then you'll meet and discuss that material. So for your research proposal, we really need a sense of how are you going to be using those sessions? What are you going to be trying to build in those sessions, and how will it lead to you fulfilling that 15,000 word requirement for the dissertation? For most students, they're going to end up making a research proposal that's longer than that. As Callum was saying, he worked on a longer book, and that's very much the norm for most students. But we basically need a sense of what do you see yourself working on when you join the degree. So that's the aim.
Okay, thank you. Another quick question is with regards to the CV. Is the CV the one that you have for your professional role, or a CV developed for your writing experience? I think this is a bit of a grey area for the CV that we actually ask you to submit. If it could be a hybrid of both, that would be perfect. Sometimes the CV is used when we are establishing your fee status. So for example, if you are a UK student, we may want to be able to see that you have always been in the UK and sort of in employment. If we can't evidence that for the last 3 years, you would potentially be classed as an overseas student until you could provide us with evidence that you are, you know, a home student and things like that. So it's around kind of helping us if you were to be made an offer to see that. I don't know whether Joe and Rupert comment whether they look at CVs beforehand, but certainly from the fee status point of view, that's where a professional or CV is helpful.
Yeah, so we do look at the CVs. We receive them in the application packet. It can be useful to list your creative writing, your writing life on that CV. As Lisa said, a hybrid option can be quite good. But I would also encourage you to have that professional option. I mean, we are a continuing education institution. We know that it's a part-time degree. We know that you have professional lives above and beyond writing that will continue. And some of the most interesting things that people bring into the classroom come from their professional lives as well. So it's relevant to who you are as a person, what you're going to be bringing into the room. So a sense of a CV with your professional experience on as well is desirable.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Is true crime an acceptable genre to submit for our applications and develop during this course?
Yes, as long as you didn't do the crime yourself. No, it is very much acceptable. We'll work with you on the ethics research form for that, which you fill in for any kind of research. But yes, that would be a fantastic thing to write a proposal about.
Thanks, Joe. For the writing sample in the application, can we submit a portion of the novel that we are already writing? Is it okay if it is in the middle of the book and we provide a summary of the story beforehand, or should it start from the beginning of the novel?
I'd say either option is fine. I think you need to be aware that we have a lot of applications, we have a lot of reading, so it's quite nice to be able to get into a piece of writing as quickly as possible. And perhaps the beginning, you know, invariably is going to aim to do that with a reader anyway. Personally, I would prefer to look at a beginning of a novel because I get a sense of how I'm being invited into the story. But if you feel that, you know, thinking back to what Joe was saying, if the sort of the stronger part of your writing is somewhere, you know, further on in the book or in the manuscript, then yes, I think that's fine to sort of, as long as you can textualize it, but be aware that that is obviously more for us to then read and take into account before we get into the writing itself.
Okay, and I think this is the last question at the moment. Is there any way I can find out more information on what a part-time degree entails in comparison to with a full-time program? I'm curious whether there is any significant difference between the two, and will we get as much out of a part-time program versus a full-time?
That's a good question, and it somewhat links to what Rupert was pointing out at the end of his presentation, where he noted that the degree is equivalent to 180 credits. So we, for our degree, don't actually officially do credits, but our degree is equivalent to an 180 credit master's. That means that a degree takes roughly 1,800 hours. So if it was a full-time 1-year degree, you would do those 1,800 hours over 1 year. In a part-time degree, you're technically doing those 1,800 hours over 2 years. So you're doing sort of 900 hours of study a year. That's roughly the guideline for how academic courses are planned. So really all we're talking about is we're breaking down 1 year of study into 2 years. That's how we designed the course. That's how it's assessed. In practice, we find that quite a lot of students probably get more out of studying part-time than they might get from studying full-time, because breaking it down actually leaves you a lot of space to do more. As Rupert said, the degree is kind of as part-time as you want it to be. So some students will actually move to Cambridge, dedicate quite a degree of time to being on the degree, to making use of all the facilities at Cambridge and the wider university they have access to. Maybe they'll organise workshops between peers. Maybe they will pursue writing in other professional settings, starting journals, volunteering for prizes, things like that. So in some ways, we think that studying over 2 years gives students leeway to explore a little more and to do a little more on the side. But in a sense, it's just doing one straight over a year or doing one split up is the difference.
I think just very quickly, I'd add to that. I think because you're a part-time student doesn't mean you're any less in the eyes of Cambridge University. As Joe says, you have access to everything within the university, and there's so much going on anyway that might fuel your creativity or add to it. So you know, embrace everything you can through the university by being on the part-time course.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. So we're coming to the end of our session today. So I'd just like to thank you all for joining us this evening, and we hope that you found this informative. If you have any questions, as we have said previously, you can email them into Callie in the enrolments team. You can contact us via our website. So please do get in touch, reach out to us if you have any further questions after this evening. So thank you very much, everyone.